everyone, it's Rachel. In this tutorial, I want to show you how to color ultra high gloss, hyper realistic lips using the Color Therapy app. If you'd like to follow along, search for this image under lips. Let's have fun with adding super up close fine details to these lips to make them look ultra glossy. It's actually easier than you think. All right, so I wanted to start off by showing you a super amazing example from the app by Maria78. I was really inspired by all of the beautiful reflections that she did. And it's always a good idea to find a reference image, like a photograph or something, so you can really get those fine details and know where to put them. All right, so over in the red palette on the top row, I'm using the 5th color and just tapping to fill the lips in. Now select the 2nd color on the top row. And let's go over to the airbrush tool. Let's do size 35 and opacity at 40. And let's turn coloring inside the lines mode set to on. So let's shade all of the edges. So the inside edges of the lips. There's also a suggested shadow that's already there, so you can kind of shade that. And I'm also gonna follow those wrinkle lines in the lips, the top and bottom lips. So they're just kind of going in a vertical motion and just curving with the shape. Just using little short strokes, just following those lines. And now let's choose the 1st color on the red palette, and we're just going to repeat with some more darker shadows. So I'm just zooming in a little bit and repeating. Now it's also cool to have a little cast shadow on the bottom of objects. So the way that you do that is you just leave a little bit of the lighter red on the very edge. Now let's go over to the smear tool, and we're gonna do the size and opacity at 100, and let's just blend it very smoothly. So just kind of smoothing out all those lines softly, pushing and pulling. Now with the pen tool, let's set the opacity all the way down to 1 and the size at 3%. And I'm using the 6th color on the top row of the red palette. And we're just gonna do fine lines all over the lips. So it's gonna be a bit hard to see here, but I'm just drawing these quick, beautiful, long, fine lines. We can turn coloring inside the lines mode to off. And I'm going with the shape of the lips, just adding some fine details. Now back in the red palette, let's use the last color on the top row. So it's a lighter pink color, and let's do the same thing with the same settings. So now we have a few lighter lines here. They don't need to be perfect. They can overlap, and they can be short or they can be long. We're just adding in those little wrinkle lines. The more of those little lines you start to add, the more details you'll get in those lips. And it's really that easy. Now with the pen tool, let's set the size to 2 now and opacity at 30. We're gonna add little dots everywhere, just little dots. Just tons and tons of little dots. And you can kind of clump some of them together, and you can skip areas so it's a little bit more varied. So these little dots create texture on the lips, and they're little tiny points of reflection as well. You can also let some of those dots kind of be longer or shorter. Like some of them can be, they don't have to just be dots only. They can kind of be messy, and that looks good too. So if your finger kind of smears a little bit when you're doing the dots, that's all right. It's okay. It adds more texture and it looks good that way. All right, so it's up to you how many little dots you want to add. Now go over to the airbrush tool. We're gonna do size 2 and opacity at 40. And sample your bright red color and add some more lines, just kind of here and there. So not everywhere, but just enough so we have a few more emphasized lines. And then you want to do the same thing with that dark red too. So sample your darkest red, and then we'll add a few more lines that way as well. And some can be a little bit shorter, some can be a little bit longer. Back with the pen tool, let's do size 30 and opacity at 40. Using white, let's highlight those suggested areas for the highlights that are in the template. So right down here, just gonna add in little highlights, and on the top too. You can kind of go over, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now let's do size 20 and opacity at 85. And let's do another little layer. So let's just do that layer kind of inside the last one. You can also add them in other places if you want. Now lower the opacity down to 40, and then make little squiggle lines around those highlights that we just did. Just kind of like messy squigglies. And then set the size to 4 and opacity at 50. And you can draw a little very rough little circle around your highlights on the bottom. You can do a couple layers if you need to. This makes it look super glossy. Then you can add little dots and lines next to it, and more little squigglies inside. Raise your opacity to about 70 now. And let's just add more little squiggly lines just for extra super bright high gloss look. And I'm doing little short strokes, maybe a random one, and a few like little dots and lines coming down. And then you might want to add in some little highlights just to the little corners of the lips too. Now to make everything pop, if you make the diamond very shiny, that'll look great. And don't forget to color in the tongue, the teeth, and the background. If you'd like to see more tutorials like this, don't forget to subscribe to the Color Therapy YouTube channel so you don't miss any new tutorial videos. Thanks for watching our tutorial. You can get the Color Therapy app for free on the App Store.